The hot coffee scalded Charlotte Foster's hand as the cup slipped from her fingers, creating a brown puddle on the pristine floor of Bella Vista, the chicest restaurant in Manhattan where she'd worked for 3 years. It was 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday that had already begun with her broken alarm clock, no hot water in the shower, and now this. "Shit," she muttered, kneeling down to clean the mess with the dish towel she always kept in her apron pocket. "Charlotte," Margaret's shrill voice cut through the morning air. "Table 17 is complaining that their order is wrong for the 3rd consecutive day." Charlotte sighed, pushing her straight black hair behind her ear. At 24, she'd seen it all in this place. Impossible customers, temperamental cooks, and colleagues colleagues like Derek. Speaking of the devil, Derek Montenegro appeared beside her, all smiles and fake charm, balancing a tray with the elegance of someone who knew exactly how to impress the most generous tables. "Let me handle table 17, he said, winking. "I have a special way with difficult customers." Charlotte frowned. Derek always volunteered to serve the most expensive tables, especially when businessmen were involved. And lately she'd noticed something strange. Her tips were decreasing even when customers seemed satisfied. "Derek, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked, but he'd already disappeared toward table 17. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of confused orders, spilled coffee, and the growing sensation that something was very wrong. Charlotte had always been observant, a trait her grandmother said was both a blessing and a curse, and today her intuition was screaming alarms. That's when she saw it. Derek was at table 15, serving a man in an impeccable suit who clearly didn't belong to the type who asked for discounts on their bill. The man left a $50 bill on the table, but when Derek came to collect it, Charlotte saw exactly what happened. He took the bill, left $10 in its place, and pocketed the rest. Charlotte's blood boiled. Not just because of the cheating, but because she recognized the table. It had been hers until Derek kindly offered to take over when the customer arrived. "Margaret," Charlotte called, walking determinedly toward the manager. "I need to talk to you. It's about Derek and the tips." Margaret sighed, looking over her reading glasses. "Charlotte, I don't have time for drama between employees." "It's not drama. I saw him steal tips. Not just mine, but probably from other waiters too." "That's a very serious accusation," Margaret said, her voice lowering. "Are you sure about what you're saying?" Charlotte nodded firmly. "Absolutely." "Very well. I'll investigate. But until then, I prefer you don't work the same shift as Derek anymore. You can finish today, but starting tomorrow, you're on the afternoon shift." Charlotte felt her stomach sink. The afternoon shift meant fewer customers, fewer tips, less money to pay the rent that was already overdue. But it was the right thing to do. 3 hours later, Margaret called Charlotte for a private conversation in the small room that served as an office. "Derek denied everything," Margaret said bluntly. "And frankly, Charlotte, he's one of our employees most beloved by customers. He has excellent online reviews and there's never been a complaint against him. But I saw, and you, on the other hand," Margaret continued, "have a history of being, let's say, excessively critical of your colleagues. Remember the situation with Sarah last month? And with Kevin before that?" Charlotte felt the world spinning. "I was right about Sarah being late and about Kevin being..." "The problem, Charlotte, is that nobody likes working with someone who's always pointing out flaws in others." "But I'm not pointing out flaws. I'm being honest about what I see." Margaret sighed heavily. "Look, you're a good waitress, but you can't keep causing problems. I'm going to have to let you go." The words hit Charlotte like a punch to the stomach. "Margaret, please, I need this job. I can prove Derek is stealing, just give me more time. The decision has been made. You can collect your things." 30 minutes later, Charlotte was on the Fifth Avenue sidewalk, holding a cardboard box with her personal belongings and looking at New York's movement as if she were seeing the city for the first time. Her phone rang. It was her best friend, Jessica. "Char, how was work today?" Charlotte laughed, but it was a humorless sound. "Well, Jess, I got fired for being too honest." "What? Tell me everything." As Charlotte explained the situation, she didn't notice the man in the impeccable suit who had left Bella Vista and was standing a few meters away, clearly listening to the conversation. Mitchell Moretti had returned to the restaurant to retrieve his forgotten wallet and couldn't help but overhear the waitress who had served him that morning telling someone on the phone about how she'd lost her job for reporting a thieving colleague. The same waitress who had been genuinely nice, who had honestly admitted when she got his order wrong, and who was now on the street because she'd done the right thing. Mitchell stood there for a moment, watching Charlotte gesture animatedly as she spoke on the phone, her genuine indignation evident in every movement. He had just discovered that two of his closest business partners had tried to deceive him in a $50 million deal. The auditing firm he'd hired had cost a fortune, and still hadn't detected the fraud until it was almost too late. And there was an unemployed waitress who had lost her job because she couldn't stay quiet when she saw something wrong. Mitchell smiled for the first time in weeks. Maybe the universe was trying to tell him something. Charlotte was still standing on the sidewalk, staring at her cardboard box like it might magically transform into a job offer, when a shadow fell across her face. "Excuse me." She looked up to find the man from table 15, the one Derek had stolen tips from, standing in front of her. Up close, he was even more intimidating than she'd remembered. Tall, with dark hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His eyes were an unusual shade of green, and they were studying her with an intensity that made her want to check if she had something on her face. "Yes?" Charlotte said, clutching her box tighter. "You're the waitress who served me this morning. Charlotte, right?" "Former waitress," she corrected with a bitter laugh. "And yes, Charlotte Foster. How did you—" "I couldn't help but overhear your phone conversation." He gestured toward the restaurant. "You lost your job because you reported a colleague for stealing tips?" Charlotte felt heat rise in her cheeks. Great. Now random customers knew about her professional disasters. "Look, if you're here to complain about the service or something—" "Actually, quite the opposite." He extended his hand. "Mitchell Moretti, and I have a proposition for you." Charlotte stared at his outstretched hand like it might bite her. "A proposition? From a complete stranger on the street? That's not creepy at all." Mitchell's lips twitched. Was that almost a smile? "Fair point. Let me buy you coffee and explain properly. There's a Starbucks across the street. I just got fired for being honest about a tip thief, and now you want to take me to coffee?" Charlotte shook her head. "My day literally cannot get any weirder." "Trust me, it can." Something in his tone made her look at him more carefully. There was no mockery there, no pity either, just curiosity, and maybe, if she wasn't imagining things, a hint of desperation. "One coffee," she said finally. "But I'm keeping my pepper spray handy." I wouldn't expect anything less from someone who takes down tip thieves. 10 minutes later, they were sitting across from each other in Starbucks, Charlotte's cardboard box taking up half the small table between them. She wrapped her hands around her latte, grateful for the warmth, and waited for Mitchell to explain why a man who clearly had better things to do was buying coffee for an unemployed waitress. "So," she said, when the silence stretched too long. "Proposition?" Mitchell leaned back in his chair, studying her again with those unsettling green eyes. "What do you know about corporate fraud?" "I know that rich people seem really good at it." This time he definitely smiled. "Accurate. I own an investment firm, Moretti Capital. We handle portfolios worth hundreds of millions of dollars." Charlotte nearly choked on her latte. "Hundreds of millions? And you're talking to me because last week I discovered that two of my most trusted business partners have been embezzling funds for over a year. They've stolen approximately $12 million. Holy shit." Charlotte slapped a hand over her mouth. No, that's exactly the right response." Mitchell's expression darkened. "The auditing firm I hired missed it completely. My lawyers missed it. My accountants missed it. Do you know who finally caught them?" Charlotte shook her head. "A junior intern who noticed that the coffee expenses in their department were unusually high. She investigated and found they were billing personal purchases as business expenses. That led to discovering the larger fraud." "Good for her." "Exactly. Which brings me to my proposition. Mitchell leaned forward. I need someone with your particular talent. My talent? For getting fired? For spotting when people are lying. Charlotte blinked. I'm sorry, what? This morning, you immediately identified that your colleague was stealing, not because you saw money change hands, anyone could have missed that, but because you noticed patterns. You observed behavior. You trusted your instincts when something felt wrong. That's just paying attention. Exactly. And I'm willing to pay you $50,000 to pay attention for me. Charlotte's latte cup slipped from her suddenly nerveless fingers, but Mitchell caught it before it could hit the table. $50,000? She whispered. Plus benefits, health insurance, and a clothing allowance since you'd be attending business meetings with me. To do what exactly? I have a board meeting in 2 weeks where we're voting on several major deals. I need someone who can sit in those meetings, observe the people involved, and tell me when they're lying. Charlotte stared at him. You want to hire me as a human lie detector? Essentially, yes. That's insane. Is it? You've already proven you're willing to sacrifice your own job to report dishonesty. That's exactly the kind of integrity I need. Charlotte's mind raced. $50,000 would solve her rent problems, her student loan payments, her credit card debt. But it sounded too good to be true. Why me? She asked. Why not hire a professional investigator or something? Because professionals are expected. People put on their best behavior around auditors and investigators. But a secretary, an assistant, they barely notice. He paused. Besides, after what happened with my partners, I need someone I can trust completely. Someone who can't be bought. How do you know I can't be bought? You literally just met me. Mitchell's smile was sharp. Because you turned down keeping quiet about stolen tips for job security. Most people would have looked the other way. Charlotte felt a flutter of something she couldn't identify. Pride, attraction, panic. This is crazy, she said. Is that a no? She thought about her empty bank account, her overdue rent, the stack of rejection letters on her kitchen table from every other restaurant in the city. What would I actually have to do? Attend meetings with me. Observe. Listen. Take notes on anything that seems off. Mitchell pulled a business card from his jacket. Think about it, but I need an answer by tomorrow morning. The first meeting is Thursday. Charlotte took the card, running her thumb over the expensive embossed lettering. And you're sure this is legal? Completely. You'd officially be my executive assistant. The lie detection would be an unofficial skill. Executive assistant, Charlotte repeated. I've never been anyone's assistant. You've been managing difficult customers, handling multiple orders and spotting problems in a high-pressure environment for 3 years. Trust me, you're qualified. Charlotte looked around the Starbucks, at the people rushing past the windows, at her cardboard box of belongings. 6 hours ago, her biggest worry had been whether Derek was stealing her tips. Now, a millionaire was offering her more money than she'd ever seen to be his personal truth detector. Can I ask you something? She said. Shoot. Why do you seem so, I don't know, angry? I mean, besides the obvious fraud thing. Mitchell's expression shuddered slightly. Let's just say I've learned the hard way that trusting the wrong people can cost you everything. There was pain there, Charlotte realized. Real hurt beneath all that expensive polish. Okay, she said quietly. Okay, you'll think about it? Okay, I'll do it. Mitchell blinked, clearly surprised. Just like that? Charlotte shrugged. You said you need someone you can trust. Well, I need someone who values honesty enough to pay for it. Seems like we both got what we need. For the first time since she'd met him, Mitchell's smile looked genuinely warm. I think this is going to be an interesting 2 weeks, Charlotte Foster. Yeah, Charlotte said, tucking his business card into her pocket. I have a feeling you're right. Charlotte stood in front of the gleaming glass tower that housed Moretti Capital, clutching a shopping bag from Macy's, and questioning every life decision that had led her to this moment. The black blazer and pencil skirt she'd bought with her last credit card felt like a costume, and she was pretty sure she looked like a kid playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. You can do this, she muttered to herself. earning strange looks from the suited professionals streaming past her. It's just like waiting tables, except instead of carrying plates, you're carrying secrets, and instead of tips, you get... Okay, this analogy isn't working. The lobby was all marble and intimidation, with a reception desk that looked like it could launch missiles. Charlotte approached the perfectly groomed receptionist, who looked up with the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm here to see Mitchell Moretti," Charlotte said, trying to project confidence. "I'm Charlotte Foster, his newest assistant." The receptionist's smile became fractionally more genuine. "Oh, you're the one everyone's been talking about." "Everyone's been talking about me?" Charlotte's stomach dropped. "What are they saying?" "Just that Mr. Moretti hired someone very unexpectedly." The receptionist's tone was carefully neutral, but Charlotte caught the underlying message. "Who the hell are you, and what are you doing here?" 42nd floor, the receptionist continued, handing her a visitor's badge. "Elevator bank to your right." The elevator ride felt like it lasted approximately 3 years. When the doors finally opened, Charlotte stepped into what looked like the set of a movie about powerful people making powerful decisions. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of Manhattan that probably cost more per square foot than most people's entire apartments. "You made it." Charlotte spun around to find Mitchell walking toward her, and her brain temporarily short-circuited. Yesterday's impressive suit had been replaced by an even more impressive one, and he moved with the kind of easy confidence that came from knowing you belonged in spaces like this. "I almost didn't," Charlotte admitted. "I stood outside for 10 minutes convincing myself this wasn't an elaborate prank." "And what conclusion did you reach?" "That if it is a prank, at least it's an expensive one." Mitchell's laugh was warm and genuine. "Come on. Let me show you around before you change your mind." He led her through a maze of offices and conference rooms, introducing her to a blur of names and faces that she had no hope of remembering. Everyone was polite, professional, and clearly dying to know who she was and why Mitchell Moretti had suddenly acquired an assistant no one had heard of. "This is your office," Mitchell said, stopping in front of a glass-walled space that was larger than Charlotte's entire apartment. "This is mine." Charlotte stared at the mahogany desk, the leather chair, the computer setup that looked like it could run NASA. "Are you sure you didn't mean to show me the supply closet?" "I'm sure." Mitchell leaned against the doorframe, watching her take it all in. "There's a company credit card in the desk drawer for any expenses you might have. Lunch, transportation, whatever you need." Charlotte sat down gingerly in the leather chair, half expecting alarms to go off. "Okay, so what exactly am I supposed to do here? I mean, besides the obvious lie-detecting thing." "Today? Learn. Observe. Get a feel for how things work." Mitchell pulled up a chair across from her desk. "Tomorrow we have our first real test, which is a meeting with the Blackstone Group. They want us to invest in their new tech startup, something about revolutionary AI software. The deal is worth $30 million. Charlotte's eyes widened. "$30 million? And you want me to, what, sit there and see if they're lying?" "Exactly. But first, you need to understand how these meetings work." Mitchell opened a folder on her desk. "These are the key players you'll be watching." Charlotte studied the photographs and profiles. James Blackstone, CEO, Rebecca Tang, CTO, David Morrison, CFO. She looked up at Mitchell. "What am I looking for?" "Inconsistencies, nervous tells, anyone who seems to be working too hard to convince us." Mitchell's expression grew serious. "The thing about con artists is that they're usually very good at what they do, but they can't help themselves. They always oversell." "Oversell how?" "Too much detail in their stories. Overcompensating with charm, getting defensive about questions they should be able to answer easily." He paused. "Trust your instincts, Charlotte. That little voice that told you Derek was stealing, listen to it." Charlotte nodded, then hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Shoot. Why didn't you just hire a professional investigator? I mean, really. This seems like something that requires actual training." Mitchell was quiet for a moment, and Charlotte caught something flickering across his face. Vulnerability, maybe, or old pain. "Because professionals have protocols," he said finally. "They look for specific things, follow specific patterns. But dishonesty isn't always that neat. He met her eyes. Sometimes the most dangerous lies come from people you trust, people you care about. There was definitely a story there, Charlotte realized. Something personal that had made Mitchell so suspicious of everyone around him. Speaking of trust, she said carefully, how do you know I won't sell whatever information I learn here? Mitchell's smile was sharp. Because if you wanted to sell information, you would have kept quiet about Derek and made friends with him. Instead, you got yourself fired for doing the right thing. He stood up. Besides, I had you thoroughly background checked yesterday. You what? Charlotte's voice pitched higher. Relax. Clean credit history, no criminal record, and your former boss at the pizza place you worked through college said you once returned a $20 bill a customer accidentally left behind, even though you needed the money for textbooks. Charlotte felt heat rise in her cheeks. You talked to Tony? I talked to everyone. Mitchell headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Charlotte? Yeah? Tomorrow when we're in that meeting? Remember that you're not just Charlotte the waitress anymore. You're Charlotte Foster, executive assistant to Mitchell Moretti. Own that. After he left, Charlotte sat alone in her enormous office, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. 24 hours ago, she'd been unemployed and eating ramen for dinner. Now she had a corporate credit card and was about to help evaluate a $30 million deal. Her phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. How's the new job? Is your boss as hot as he sounds? Charlotte stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. The job is terrifying, and yes, he's ridiculously attractive. Also, I think I'm in way over my head. But you're doing it anyway? Charlotte looked around her office again, then back at her phone. Yeah, I'm doing it anyway. 3 hours later, after spending the afternoon reading background reports and financial statements that made her head spin, Charlotte was beginning to understand the scope of what Mitchell had asked her to do. These weren't small-time restaurant scams. These were deals that could make or break companies that affected hundreds of jobs and millions of dollars. Charlotte? Mitchell appeared in her doorway, jacket slung over his arm and tie loosened. How are you holding up? I'm pretty sure I understand about 10% of what I read today, she admitted, but I'm a fast learner. Good. You ready to get out of here? Charlotte looked at the clock, surprised to see it was past 7. Oh God, I didn't realize how late it was. You don't have to wait for me. I'm not waiting. I'm offering to buy you dinner. Mitchell's expression was casual, but there was something underneath it that made Charlotte's pulse quicken. Consider it a working dinner. We can go over tomorrow's meeting. This is not a date, Charlotte told herself firmly. This is a professional dinner between a boss and his employee. A boss who happens to be unfairly attractive and who looked at you like you were the most interesting person in the room when you were just being honest. Okay, she said, grabbing her purse. But somewhere with normal-sized portions. Rich people food is weird. Mitchell's laugh followed them all the way to the elevator. Charlotte had been awake since 4 a.m., alternating between practicing confident handshakes in the mirror and having mild panic attacks about potentially ruining a $30 million deal. By the time she arrived at the office, she'd consumed enough coffee to power a small city and was vibrating with nervous energy. You look like you're about to jump out of your skin, Mitchell observed when she knocked on his office door at 8:30 a.m. sharp. I feel like I'm about to jump out of my skin, Charlotte admitted, sitting down across from his desk. What if I can't tell if they're lying? What if I think they're lying when they're not? What if... Charlotte. Mitchell's voice was calm, steady. Breathe. She took a deep breath, then another. Sorry, This is a lot of money. It is. But that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to tell me what you observe. Nothing more, nothing less. Right. Charlotte straightened her shoulders. Observe and report. I can do that. I know you can. Mitchell's smile was warm, reassuring. The meeting starts in an hour. You ready to meet the Blackstone Group? The conference room was a study in power dynamics. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a table that could seat 20, and enough technology to run a small country. Charlotte sat slightly behind and to the right of Mitchell. notebook open, trying to look like she belonged there. The Blackstone Group entered like they owned the place, which, given the amount of money they were asking for, they essentially did. James Blackstone was exactly what Charlotte had expected from his photo. Silver-haired, expensively dressed, with the kind of smile that politicians practiced in mirrors. Rebecca Tang was younger, sharper, with intelligent eyes that seemed to catalog everything in the room. David Morrison looked nervous, which immediately put Charlotte on alert. "Mitchell," James boomed, extending his hand. "Good to see you again, and this must be your new assistant we've heard so much about." "Heard so much about?" Charlotte thought. "From who?" "Charlotte Foster," she said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, confident, but he held on just a fraction too long, like he was trying to make an impression. "James Blackstone, pleasure to meet you." His smile was perfect, practiced. "I hope you're ready for an exciting presentation." As they settled into their seats, Charlotte opened her notebook and began to observe. James dominated the conversation, gesturing broadly as he talked about revolutionary technology and game-changing innovations. Rebecca provided technical details when prompted, her responses precise and measured. David mostly nodded along, occasionally glancing at his phone. "Our AI software represents the next evolution in predictive analytics," James was saying, his voice full of enthusiasm. "We're not just talking about marginal improvements, we're talking about a complete paradigm shift." Charlotte made a note. Lots of buzzwords, not many specifics. "The beta testing has exceeded all our expectations," Rebecca added. "We're seeing accuracy rates of over 95% in our target applications." "That's impressive," Mitchell said. "Can you show us some of those test results?" There was a pause, just a fraction of a second, but Charlotte caught it. James and Rebecca exchanged a look so quick that most people would have missed it. "Of course," James said smoothly. "David, would you pull up the beta results?" David fumbled with his laptop, his hands slightly shaky. "I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with the connection." Charlotte watched as sweat beaded on David's forehead despite the air conditioning. He kept glancing between James and Rebecca like he was waiting for instructions. "No problem," James said, his smile never wavering. "We can email those to you later today. The important thing is that we're ready to scale. We just need the right partner." "Why didn't they bring the test results with them to a $30 million pitch meeting?" Charlotte wrote in her notebook. The presentation continued for another hour. James painted a picture of massive returns and industry dominance. Rebecca provided just enough technical detail to sound credible without getting too deep into specifics. David said almost nothing, just sat there looking increasingly uncomfortable. "The market opportunity is enormous," James concluded. "We're talking about first-mover advantage in a space that's about to explode. The companies that get in now will see returns that make the early internet investments look small." Mitchell leaned back in his chair. "It sounds very promising. What's your timeline for product launch?" Another pause, another quick glance between James and Rebecca. 6 months, Rebecca said confidently. "We're already in advanced development." "Actually," David spoke up suddenly, then stopped when James shot him a sharp look. "I mean, yes, 6 months sounds right." Charlotte made another note. David tried to contradict the timeline. "Excellent," Mitchell said. "We'll need to do our due diligence, of course. Financial records, technical specifications, perhaps a demonstration of the current software." "Absolutely," James said quickly. "Though I should mention we've had several other firms express serious interest. We're really looking for a partner who can move quickly." "Pressure tactics," Charlotte wrote. "Classic sales technique." The meeting wrapped up with handshakes and promises to be in touch soon. As the Blackstone Group filed out, Charlotte noticed that David lingered for a moment, looking like he wanted to say something, before James called him away. When the door closed behind them, Mitchell turned to Charlotte. "Well, what did you think?" Charlotte looked down at her notes, organizing her thoughts. "James is definitely overselling. Too much enthusiasm, not enough substance. And he used pressure tactics at the end. Multiple interested parties need to move quickly. That's standard con artist behavior. What about Rebecca?" "She's smart, probably technically competent, but she was being very careful about what information she gave out. She answered your questions without really answering them. And David? David is the weak link. Charlotte tapped her pen against her notebook. He looked terrified the entire time. He tried to contradict Rebecca about the timeline, and he couldn't pull up the test results that should have been the centerpiece of their presentation. Mitchell nodded slowly. Anything else? They've heard about me. James mentioned it when we were introduced. How would they know you hired a new assistant unless someone told them? Mitchell's expression darkened. Good catch. What's your gut feeling about the whole thing? Charlotte closed her notebook and looked him straight in the eye. My gut says they're lying about something big. Maybe the software doesn't work as well as they claim, maybe they're further behind than they're admitting, or maybe the whole thing is a scam. But something is definitely not right. Thank you. Mitchell's voice was quiet, serious. That confirms what I was already thinking. So you're not going to invest? Not without a lot more investigation. Mitchell gathered his papers. But first, I want to find out how they knew about you. They walked back to Mitchell's office in comfortable silence. Charlotte felt a rush of satisfaction. She'd done it. She'd used her instincts in a high-stakes situation and provided valuable information. Maybe she really could do this job. Charlotte, Mitchell said as they reached his office. Yeah? You did good in there. Really good. The warmth in his voice made something flutter in Charlotte's chest. Thanks. It felt, I don't know, like I was finally using my brain for something important. Your brain is definitely important. Mitchell's eyes met hers, and for a moment, the professional atmosphere shifted into something more personal. I was right to trust you. Before Charlotte could respond, Mitchell's assistant, his real assistant, the one who'd been there for years, appeared with a stack of messages. Mr. Moretti, your sister called. She said it's urgent. The moment broke. Mitchell's expression shifted back to business mode, but Charlotte caught something else there. Worry, maybe even fear. Thank you, Maria. Charlotte, we'll debrief more later. Right now, I need to make some calls. As Charlotte headed back to her office, she couldn't shake the feeling that Mitchell's reaction to his sister's call was important somehow. But she also couldn't ignore the way her heart had sped up when he'd looked at her like she was more than just an employee. This is getting complicated, she thought, and we're only 2 days in. Charlotte was reviewing financial reports when she heard raised voices coming from Mitchell's office. She tried to focus on the numbers in front of her, but the sound of Mitchell's voice, tight with anger, kept drawing her attention. Absolutely not, Sophia. We've been through this. The door to his office opened abruptly, and a woman stormed out. She was stunning in the way that only came from excellent genetics and expensive maintenance. Long dark hair, designer clothes, and the kind of confidence that suggested she'd never been told no in her life. She stopped when she saw Charlotte, her dark eyes taking in every detail. You must be the famous Charlotte, the woman said, her smile sharp as a blade. I'm Sophia Moretti Blake, Mitchell's sister. Nice to meet you, Charlotte said carefully, standing up. Something about Sophia's tone put her on immediate alert. I've heard so much about you, the honest waitress who's going to save my brother from all the terrible liars in the business world. Sophia's laugh was brittle. How refreshing. Before Charlotte could respond, Mitchell appeared in his doorway, his jaw tight with tension. Sophia, we're done here. No, Mitchell, we're not. Sophia turned back to him, her voice rising. This is my company too, and I won't let you sabotage it because of your paranoia. Paranoia? Mitchell's voice was dangerously quiet. Is that what you call learning from experience? Charlotte looked between them, feeling like she was watching a tennis match where the ball was made of pure tension. Whatever this fight was about, it had deep roots. I'm going to get some coffee, Charlotte announced, grabbing her purse. Give you two some privacy. She headed for the elevator, but not before catching Sophia's parting shot. Your new pet detective isn't going to save you from making another mistake, Mitchell. 20 minutes later, Charlotte returned with coffee for everyone, hoping the situation had cooled down. She found Mitchell alone in his office, staring out the window with his hands shoved deep in his pockets. Brought you coffee. she said softly, setting a cup on his desk. Thank you. He turned to face her, and Charlotte was surprised to see how tired he looked. I'm sorry you had to witness that. Family fights happen, Charlotte said, settling into the chair across from his desk. Want to talk about it? Mitchell was quiet for a long moment, then sat down heavily in his chair. Sophia is my business partner as well as my sister. She owns 30% of Moretti Capital. And you disagree about something? We disagree about everything lately. Mitchell rubbed his temples. She thinks I've become too suspicious, too cautious. She wants to move forward with several deals that I think are too risky. Charlotte sipped her coffee, choosing her words carefully. What kind of deals? High-return investments with companies that have impressive presentations but questionable fundamentals. Sound familiar? Like Blackstone Group? Exactly like Blackstone Group. Mitchell's expression was grim. Sophia thinks I'm letting what happened with my former partners cloud my judgment. She might be right. Charlotte studied his face. What did happen with your former partners? For a moment, she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he sighed and leaned back in his chair. Marcus Chen and Ryan Walsh. I'd known them since business school. Trusted them completely. We built this company together from nothing. His voice was flat, emotionless. Turns out they'd been siphoning money for over a year. Not just company money, client money. We almost lost everything. I'm sorry, Charlotte said quietly. That must have been devastating. The worst part wasn't the money. It was realizing that two people I considered family had been lying to my face every single day. Mitchell met her eyes. That's why I hired you, Charlotte. I need someone who can see through the lies, because apparently, I can't anymore. Charlotte felt her heart squeeze with sympathy. No wonder Mitchell was so guarded, so suspicious. He'd been betrayed by the people closest to him. So Sophia thinks you should take more risks, and you think she's being naive? Something like that. Mitchell's phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with a frown. Speaking of risks, we have another presentation this afternoon, Wellington Industries. They're looking for a $50 million investment. $50 million? Charlotte's coffee cup clattered against the saucer. That's even bigger than Blackstone. Much bigger, and Sophia is convinced it's the opportunity of a lifetime. Mitchell's expression was troubled. She's already had preliminary meetings with them. Very preliminary. Something in his tone made Charlotte look at him more sharply. What aren't you telling me? Mitchell hesitated, then pulled out a folder. Wellington Industries is owned by Thomas Wellington, Sophia's ex-boyfriend. Oh, Charlotte blinked. Oh, that's complicated. That's one word for it. Mitchell slid the folder across to her. They dated for 2 years. Broke up 6 months ago. Now he wants to do business with us. Charlotte opened the folder, studying the photographs and financial reports. Thomas Wellington was conventionally handsome in a prep school way. Blonde hair, blue eyes, the kind of smile that suggested he'd never had to work hard for anything in his life. What do you think of him? She asked. I think he's a charming narcissist who broke my sister's heart and is now trying to use their history to manipulate her into a bad deal. And what does Sophia think? She thinks I'm being overprotective and letting personal feelings interfere with business judgment. Charlotte studied the financial reports more carefully. Wellington Industries was impressive on paper. Consistent growth, strong market position, innovative product line, but something felt off. These numbers, she said slowly, they're almost too perfect. No dips, no seasonal variations, no major setbacks. Exactly what I thought. Mitchell leaned forward. Real businesses have ups and downs. This looks like someone smoothed out all the rough edges. So you think the reports are fabricated? I think Thomas Wellington is very good at making things look better than they are. The question is whether Sophia can see past their history to recognize that. Charlotte closed the folder, her mind racing. This wasn't just about a business deal. It was about family loyalty, past relationships, and the delicate balance between trust and suspicion. Mitchell, she said carefully, what if you're wrong? What if this is a legitimate opportunity and you're letting your suspicions cloud your judgment? Then we miss out on a good deal. Mitchell's voice was steady. But if I'm right and we invest, we could lose everything. After what happened with Marcus and Ryan, I can't take that risk. Before Charlotte could respond, there was a knock on the door. Sophia walked in without waiting for permission, her earlier anger replaced by cold determination. The Wellington meeting has been moved up, she announced. They'll be here in an hour. An hour? Mitchell stood up. I thought it was this afternoon. Thomas had a scheduling conflict. It was this or wait until next week. Sophia's smile was sweet as poison. I told him we'd be delighted to meet earlier. Charlotte watched the siblings stare at each other, recognizing the power play for what it was. Sophia was forcing Mitchell's hand, not giving him time to prepare or find excuses to delay. Fine, Mitchell said finally. Charlotte, are you ready for round 2? As ready as I'll ever be, Charlotte said, though her stomach was churning with nerves. As Sophia left to prepare for the meeting, Mitchell turned to Charlotte with an expression she couldn't quite read. This one's important, Charlotte, more important than Blackstone. If Thomas is running a con and Sophia can't see it because of their history, he trailed off. What happens? Then you might be the only thing standing between my family and financial ruin. No pressure at all, Charlotte thought, as she gathered her notebook and tried to ignore the voice in her head that whispered she was in way over her head. Charlotte had exactly 37 minutes to prepare for what might be the most important meeting of her life. She sat in her office, staring at Thomas Wellington's file while her mind raced through every possible scenario. Tell the truth and potentially destroy Mitchell's relationship with his sister. Stay quiet and potentially destroy Mitchell's company. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We should talk before the meeting. Coffee shop across the street. Charlotte stared at the message, her blood running cold. Thomas Wellington was reaching out to her directly. This couldn't be good. She grabbed her purse and headed for the elevator, telling herself she was just being thorough. She needed to understand what they were dealing with. Thomas Wellington was even more polished in person than in his photographs. He stood up when she entered the coffee shop, his smile perfectly calibrated to be charming without being threatening. Charlotte, thank you for coming. I hope you don't mind me reaching out directly. How did you get my number? Charlotte remained standing, every instinct on high alert. I have excellent research skills. His smile widened. Please, sit. I just want to chat. Charlotte sat reluctantly, keeping her purse strap over her shoulder. What do you want to talk about? Your position with Mitchell? It's quite unusual, isn't it? Executive assistant with no corporate experience. Thomas leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. I admire his willingness to take chances on people. It's working out well, Charlotte said carefully. I'm sure it is. Mitchell always was good at recognizing talent. Thomas's tone was conversational, but Charlotte caught something calculating in his eyes. I imagine he values your unique perspective. Mr. Wellington, what exactly are you getting at? Please call me Thomas. And I'm getting at the fact that Mitchell has become rather paranoid since his unfortunate experience with his former partners. Thomas signaled the waitress for coffee. Sophia is concerned about his judgment. Charlotte felt her temper flare. His judgment seems fine to me. Of course it does, you're new to this world. Thomas leaned forward slightly. But consider this. Mitchell hired you specifically to find problems with his potential business partners. Doesn't that seem like a self-fulfilling prophecy to you? I don't know what you mean. I mean that if someone pays you to find lies, you're going to find lies whether they exist or not. Thomas's smile never wavered. Human nature. Charlotte stared at him, realization dawning. You're trying to discredit me before the meeting even starts. I'm trying to help you understand the position you're in. Thomas pulled out an envelope and placed it on the table between them. Mitchell is asking you to make decisions that could affect hundreds of jobs, millions of dollars. That's a lot of pressure for someone with your background. Charlotte looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. What's that? A consulting fee. For your time and discretion. Thomas's voice was smooth as silk. $50,000. All you have to do is give an honest assessment of our presentation without letting Mitchell's paranoia influence your judgment. You're trying to bribe me? Charlotte's voice was flat with disbelief. I'm trying to compensate you for an objective evaluation. There's a difference. Charlotte stood up so fast her chair nearly toppled over. There really isn't. Thomas remained seated, unruffled. Think about it, Charlotte. $50,000. That's more than you made in 2 years waiting tables. Go to hell, Charlotte said, and walked out. Back in the Moretti Capitol building, Charlotte sat in the bathroom stall with her head in her hands, trying to process what had just happened. Thomas Wellington had tried to bribe her, actually bribed her, with $50,000, which meant he was definitely running some kind of scam. But it also meant that if she reported this to Mitchell, she'd be destroying any chance of reconciliation between him and Sophia. And if Sophia found out that Charlotte had met with Thomas secretly, even if it was his idea, it would look terrible. What would an honest person do? She asked herself. The answer was immediate and clear. An honest person would tell Mitchell everything, even if it complicated things, even if it hurt people she was starting to care about. Charlotte took a deep breath, checked her reflection in the mirror, and headed back to face the music. She found Mitchell in his office, adjusting his tie with sharp, precise movements that suggested barely controlled tension. Mitchell, I need to tell you something before the meeting. He looked up, immediately alert. What is it? Thomas Wellington just tried to bribe me. Mitchell went very still. He what? Charlotte told him everything. The text message, the coffee shop meeting, the envelope full of money, Thomas's attempts to undermine Mitchell's judgment. Mitchell listened in silence, his expression growing darker with every word. $50,000, he said when she finished. I didn't take it, Charlotte said quickly. I told him to go to hell. I know you didn't take it. Mitchell's voice was quiet, but there was something fierce underneath it. The question is, what do we do now? We tell Sophia, Charlotte said. She needs to know what kind of person she's dealing with. Mitchell looked at her for a long moment. You realize that if we tell her, she might not believe us. She might think we're lying to sabotage the deal. I know. And if she doesn't believe us, it could destroy my relationship with my sister permanently. Charlotte met his eyes steadily. I know that too. But you still think we should tell her? I think she deserves the truth. Charlotte paused. Even if she doesn't want to hear it. Mitchell was quiet for so long that Charlotte started to worry she'd overstepped. Then he smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him all day. This is why I hired you, he said softly. You're willing to do the right thing even when it costs you something. Before Charlotte could respond, Maria appeared in the doorway. Mr. Moretti, the Wellington party is here. Send them to conference room A, Mitchell said, and ask Sophia to join us. Tell her it's urgent. The confrontation that followed was everything Charlotte had expected and worse. Thomas entered the conference room with his usual confidence, but his smile faltered when he saw Charlotte's expression. Sophia arrived moments later, irritation written across her features. Mitchell, what's this about? Thomas is here for our meeting. Yes, he is. Mitchell gestured for everyone to sit. But first, Charlotte has something to tell you. Charlotte took a deep breath and repeated her story. Thomas's face remained impassive throughout, but she caught him tensing when she mentioned the $50,000. When she finished, the silence in the room was deafening. That's quite a story, Thomas said finally. Very creative. Are you saying she's lying? Mitchell's voice was dangerously quiet. I'm saying it's interesting that your employee would make such serious accusations right before an important business meeting. Thomas's smile was sharp, almost like she has a vested interest in sabotaging our deal. Sophia looked between them, confusion and anger warring on her face. Charlotte, are you absolutely certain about what you're telling us? I'm certain, Charlotte said firmly, and I can prove it. She pulled out her phone, navigating to her text messages. He texted me from his personal number. The message is right here. Thomas's composure cracked slightly. That could be from anyone. Then you won't mind if we call the number and see who answers, Mitchell said, reaching for his phone. This is ridiculous, Thomas said, standing up abruptly. I don't have to sit here and listen to these accusations. No, Sophia said quietly. You don't. Everyone turned to look at her. Her face was pale, but her voice was steady. You can leave, Thomas. Right now. Sophia, you can't seriously believe. I believe Charlotte. Sophia's voice was firm. And even if I didn't, the fact that you're not willing to let us call that number tells me everything I need to know. Thomas looked around the room, his charming mask finally slipping completely. You people deserve each other, he said, and stormed out. In the silence that followed, Sophia sank into her chair and put her head in her hands. I'm sorry, she said finally. I'm so sorry, Mitchell. You were right to be suspicious. Mitchell moved to sit beside his sister, his expression gentle. I wasn't right about everything. I have been too paranoid, too careful. But that doesn't mean we should ignore red flags. I wanted so badly to prove that I could spot good opportunities, Sophia said. I let my pride cloud my judgment. We all make mistakes, Charlotte said softly. The important thing is learning from them. Sophia looked up at her with something like gratitude. Thank you for being honest. I know it would have been easier to just keep quiet. Easier isn't always better, Charlotte said. Later that evening, Charlotte found herself alone with Mitchell in his office. The rest of the staff had gone home, but they'd stayed behind to debrief and plan their next steps. So, Charlotte said, settling into the chair across from his desk, how do you think I did on my first week as a human lie detector? I think you exceeded every expectation I had. Mitchell's smile was warm, genuine. You probably saved us millions of dollars. And more importantly, you helped me save my relationship with my sister. Just doing my job. No, Mitchell said, standing up and moving around the desk to lean against it in front of her. You went above and beyond your job. You could have kept quiet about Thomas's bribe attempt. It would have been safer. Charlotte felt her pulse quicken at his proximity. Safety is overrated. Is it? Mitchell's voice was soft, and something in his expression made Charlotte's breath catch. Mitchell, she said carefully, we should probably talk about what happens now. I mean, professionally speaking. Professionally speaking, I'd like to offer you a permanent position. Not as my lie detector, but as my actual partner, someone I can trust to help me make important decisions. Charlotte blinked. Partner? Equal salary. Equity in the company. Your name on the door. Mitchell's smile was slightly nervous now. What do you say? I say that sounds too good to be true. Charlotte paused. What's the catch? The catch is that I've developed feelings for my employee that are decidedly unprofessional. Charlotte's heart stopped, then started beating double time. Oh. And I'm hoping, Mitchell continued, moving slightly closer, that maybe those feelings aren't entirely one-sided. Charlotte looked up at him, at this man who'd taken a chance on her honesty and given her a life she'd never dreamed of. They're not one-sided. Good, Mitchell said, reaching out to touch her face gently. Because I've been wanting to kiss you since the moment you told Derek to go to hell. That was Thomas you told to go to hell. Derek, too. I heard about that from the other waitresses when I went back to the restaurant. Mitchell's thumb traced along her cheekbone. Apparently, you have a reputation for radical honesty. Is that a problem? Charlotte, Mitchell said, his voice warm with affection. That's exactly what I love about you. And then he kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, Charlotte was smiling so wide her cheeks hurt. So, she said, equal partners in business and in life? If you'll have me, Mitchell said. Charlotte pretended to consider it. Well, you do pay well, and the benefits package is excellent. The benefits package? Smart, handsome boss who values honesty above everything else? That's pretty much my dream job. Mitchell laughed, pulling her closer. In that case, Charlotte Foster, you're hired. Permanently? Permanently. And as Charlotte kissed him back, she reflected that sometimes the most honest thing you could do was admit that you'd found exactly what you'd been looking for, even when you hadn't known you were looking for it at all. 3 months later, Charlotte stood in front of the gleaming sign that read, Moretti and Foster Capital, still amazed that her name was actually up there. The company was thriving, with a reputation for thorough due diligence and ethical business practices. Turns out having a partner who could spot lies from a mile away was excellent for business. Ready for the board meeting? Mitchell asked, appearing beside her with 2 cups of coffee. Ready as I'll ever be, Charlotte said, accepting her cup gratefully. Think they'll try to bribe me this time? If they do, I have complete faith in your ability to tell them exactly where they can shove their money. Charlotte laughed. I do have a gift for that. They walked into the building together, partners in every sense of the word. And if Charlotte had learned anything in the past few months, it was that honesty really was the best policy, especially when it led you to exactly where you belonged.